in a path near his home, which was just northeast, I believe, of the Prairie Creek Reservoir, not far away. Like, we're talking just a few miles. And, he sees these glowing orbs pretty consistently. And the path that we're able to trace of these glowing orbs puts them in a direct line from sort of, his sighting area to this old effigy mound, this giant indigenous, burial mound. It's about 1,000+ years old. The Prairie Creek Reservoir, and then past that, Mound State Park, which is more native effigy mounds. So, I'd love to hear from, and if anybody out there listening knows anything about this, contact us. Get a hold of me at info@singular40n.com. You can just email me there. But I would love to talk to any of the native peoples of that area and just kind of get their take on that, see if any of that matches, any indigenous belief or legend or anything like that, because it seems like something of a weird coincidence to me. Weird enough where I don't necessarily want to ignore it. And that kind of high strangeness and associated orb, UFO phenomena, I mean, that's been associated with, flying humanoid or Mothman sightings since, Point Pleasant, all the way back in, the late 60s, when people first sort of became aware of Mothman in West Virginia. So it's been strange. And I still don't know exactly, where it's all going or how to wrap my head around it completely. But it feels like those definitely could be connected. And interestingly enough, it hasn't been just flying humanoid sightings that we're getting out of Indiana now too.
Now, I got to ask you a question. The people have seen these things, like, the humanoid ones. Sure. When they talk about the face, is it like the face, like, you remember Jeepers Creepers, that whatever that creature was? Are they what type of face are they describing? Is it like a human or kind of weird, scary, creepy?
Well, we don't get a lot of good details as far as the facial structure, because that was my big question, specifically with this witness too, who talked about how it had an obvious face. And so his experience was that he could make out that it had a face, so sort of if you see a person, from a good distance away, like, you'd be able to make out the silhouette of their body. You'd be able to see if they had a head, and you'd be able to see where their face was, but you might not be able to tell, their eye color or a lot of real fine details. And so that seemed to be his experience, unfortunately. Now, in other cases where people have got a better look, as far as the face is concerned, the main detail we get is always the eyes, always. And what people describe, as far as that's concerned, is red, orange, or sometimes yellow, like glowing eyes. But yeah, honestly, beyond that, we don't often get a lot of facial details, unfortunately. And I think, it's a mix of what I was talking about as far as the distance. I think that part of it has to do with the speed of these encounters. And I think, some of it has to do sort of with the shock factor, where it just frankly the details may not exactly register in their mind, honestly, because they are so just either frightened or the thing that they're seeing is so alien that they just don't know what to make of it.
Well,
So,
I don't think anybody could. Now, I just want to jump in there. Karen Banks said that she actually saw a bird, like the prehistoric looking type of one that was big enough where it scared her to the point where, she thought it was big enough where it could just pick her up and take her away.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's honestly we had 2 sightings that came out recently. No, this was a husband and wife, and they actually reported their sightings separately. I got the wife's report first, and then the husband second, and they were outside of Gary, Indiana. So that's right on the shore of Lake Michigan, on the very southern tip of that lake, is Gary, Indiana. And their experiences were pretty similar. It's kind of a funny story, honestly. So the wife had her sighting. Well, actually, hold on, whose was first? I believe it was, let's see, so the husband had his sighting originally, in August of 2015. And so the wife actually had hers a little bit after that. Okay. So the husband had his first sighting, and his wife kind of laughed it off and was like, "All right, you're crazy, whatever." And so he didn't really talk about it with her anymore. And then she had a sighting, and of course, at that point, every married person listening knows. Well, okay, now it's time to take this story seriously. The wife saw it too, so and so they saw the reports coming out of Indiana. And I think that it was that report that I talked about before, the bat-like one with the clear face or whatever, that inspired them to come forward. And what they described, was nothing humanoid. What they described was a large, well, really giant, honestly, like grayish-colored prehistoric bird. So, and when I say big, I mean huge. Like, I don't know how something like this could exist in nature and not be known, frankly. Because the husband who I talked to, now, like, he had 2 different sightings, one from 2015 and then another a year later. So he said that, it was early morning, it was around 6 a.m. in August of 2015. So it was light out, sun's up by then. And he was just getting home from Michigan City, and he's traveling westbound on the interstate just south of Gary. So he gets off of his exit, and he sees what appears to be this enormous prehistoric-looking creature flying overhead. And obviously, like, he's shocked to see this thing, but he described its shadow as being, at least 30 to 40 yards long. So this thing's casting this huge shadow, and he's a carpenter by trade. So, he's fairly good. Like, he's got a fair eye for estimating, size and distance, being able to eyeball that kind of stuff. And so he had estimated that the wingspan of this thing had to be like 40 feet, which again is just crazy. And even if he was way off, even if he was just really overestimating the size of this thing, to be off, even really, really, really being off what is that? What does 40 feet become then? 20 feet? That's still bigger than any known flying creature. I mean, really.
I gotta say something, Karen. She's on one of the chats. I'm on 3 different chats on 3 different apps right now, and it's sometimes people don't wonder why I don't respond. I mean, I got these computers up, and one chat window's going, this chat window's going, this chat window's going. But I asked her how big it was. Was it big as a small car? And she said, including the wingspan, yes, easily. Now this is the one she saw. So I mean, it makes you wonder, where can these things go? I mean, it's something that big, but you know what? There's still so many different areas out there where, humans don't, run around.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. There is some real wilderness left. Like this particular area, Gary, it's a pretty developed area. Especially where they had these sightings. And these were enormous creatures, like as big as anything that's ever existed on this continent to our knowledge. I think the biggest pterosaur ever found in the fossil record had a wingspan of about what this guy saw. The Quetzalcoatlus. Like they would have wingspans of 30 plus feet, and they did live in North America, which, makes me wonder, are these people seeing, a living animal that exists in our time, or are they seeing something from, the distant past? Is there's something else going on here that's weirder than just a real animal that is somehow surviving in the middle of this populated area without anybody knowing about it?
Well, I can yeah, Tobias, has there been any reports like portals or anything in the area? I know up here in Washington, up by Clearwater, there's Clearwater. There's reported, portals and stuff. People, claiming they've seen some weird things come out of nowhere. I'm just kind of curious. Could they be coming through a portal and coming through, back in time or whatever? And then,
it's something to consider. Yeah, definitely. That's something that I've definitely given some thought to. Now, in these particular cases, and we don't necessarily have to go into the details of both the husband and the wife sightings, because frankly, they were pretty similar, not exactly similar. Like, I don't think they're just telling the exact same story. Like, they definitely had their own sightings, but they were weirdly consistent enough where if you've heard one, you can get a pretty good idea of what the other one was like. As far as portals are concerned, now there wasn't anything mentioned specifically with this husband or wife, but in other reported cases around Lake Michigan, not specifically like pterosaur related, not that type of cryptid, but with some of the flying humanoid stuff, people have talked about seeing it, suddenly vanish. Just it's there 1 second, and then the next it's just gone. And so, while not necessarily a portal per se, I mean that's a very similar effect, where these things can be there, and then they will just disappear, and who knows where they went or how they got there, frankly. But traveling between dimensions or parallel universes or something similar, it's as good of an explanation as any I've got at this point. So, sure, portals, why not?
Well, I mean, the thing is, like Karen said, the thing was big enough. What she saw was big enough where he could just picked her up. She's not a small person. Yeah. So, and I'm just wondering if, like some of the people have been out, places have gone missing, if they ran into these weird, cryptic monsters or whatever you want to call them. I mean, it just makes me wonder. I mean, and when you do these interviews with these people, what type of background, job wise, do they have, education wise, and what do you feel after